All right, all right, all right. Matthew McConaughey catchphrase. Um, Today is the 15th. Approximately 2 weeks, I will be the proud papa of a 3-year-old, even though that 3-year-old doesn't know who I am. This isn't a channel about reincarnation. It's basically a time capsule, a treasure trove of something that I don't think will actually make a difference for some time. I'd like it to be accepted overnight, but I just don't think it's going to be. What is the purpose of humanity once AI solves the problem? What are we meant to do? Like, the idea was go to work, come home, drink a beer, go to bed, and then on Sunday, you went and chilled out with people who all agreed that you were going to go to some place after this. That place was heaven, paradise, Valhalla, you name it, the My Little Pony reunion tour. I mean, some people just, they think my outcome will be whatever it is. And, one person's heaven is another person's hell. You really have to sit down and wonder, like, what is the real difference between a rave and church service? Both are glorifying the sensation of the experience and saying, hey, this is something to be taken seriously. And then there's the other side that says, no, nothing's to be taken seriously because nothing matters. And think about having that as the choice. Do you want nothing to matter? Or do you want something to matter? Your choice. Very rare. And this is where I, enter a small debate. And I think it's small because it does come down to each individual person. Big debates are about big groups. Small debates are about internal workings. And one of those internal workings is your desired outcome for this place. You want Jesus to come and save you? Fine. You want, Muhammad to tap dance at the gates of paradise, introducing each of the 72 virgins for your, eternity? You go right ahead. My Little Pony? Yeehaw, giddy up, have fun. But that same opportunity is mine as well. And that's all this is. That's what this channel is. It's, hey, this is the life that I was living. And 10 years after this information hit, it's still hitting. It didn't just dissipate. It didn't just go away. So what am I doing with it? And I'm, because of my houseboundness right now and my separation from my son, the depression is ripe, or the atmosphere for depression is ripe. And yet, on the other hand, my skills have gone into overdrive. Skills that, I wouldn't have paid attention to otherwise. And so, talk about, turning your lemon into lemonade or your shit sandwich into an hors d'oeuvre. It's like, you've got to make the best with what you got. And that's been my entire life. And I have to admit now that there were definite times where I had it way better than others. And it's so hard to see that as a child because you have no experience to relate to. There is no relative experience. And so as you move through your life comparing and contrasting, when you have more and more extra experiences, it tends to detach you from, the typical lifetime experience. Grow up, follow the rules, help out in the community, make a family that enjoys that community and can, make it better. And while we're, doing the daily grind of making the world better, it's like, hey, we have to prepare for these moments of extreme excitement as well as extreme, like bottom of the barrel experience. And so where I'm sitting right now, am I at the bottom of the barrel? And I'm going, I've used a helmet as a pillow underneath a Humvee before. I ain't there. I've had rockets shot at me where I've had to go jump behind a ridiculous barrier that wasn't going to save me from shit. But it was the best cover I could get to. And I still don't think I could relate that to the experience of becoming aware of my predecessors and what that means to this world. I mean, the gravity of what I carry with me is world changing. And when a person who has a lot of money says that, people listen because they think the outcome will produce money. Yet the pattern that I'm looking at is the opposite of that. It's the humility pattern. And yet the biggest grand slams were in the proof of what was going on for the character of Jesus Christ. His ability to shape reality for the betterment of the society is what got him his following. Now, when I look at Joseph Smith, I'm going, well, what was the radical, shift in reality that he provided? And he goes, and here I am. I watched another video with Harris, John and Harris on it. And he does such a fantastic job in his description of the modern Mormon church and the history that just does not coincide with its original teachings. He talks about, the post-World War II efforts and then the complete restructuring of the business and how the people that were leading the church did it as business owners. And now they sit at, one of the most powerful, influential, and richest, wealthiest organizations in the world. And I just look at them and I'm going, and what's your plan? Oh, it's always the same. It's, just prepare for Jesus. Go away. Don't ask questions. That money's for Jesus. It's like, in what world do you think Jesus wants money? Like, how can you twist the scenario so drastically to say that Jesus wants your money? Show me that scenario where it says, render unto Caesar where Caesar's. It's like, notice how he says, that's money. Give it to Caesar. It's his. That's not what I do here. Money is irrelevant. It is a substandard way of thinking. And yet it is so closely tied to our mortality that we can't unsee its effects for the idea of livelihoods and the state of your life. It's like more money equals more easier solutions. That's all it really means. And so where I sit, I'm going, do I have all the things that I need to solved? And the answer is absolutely yes. The last issue that I'm really dealing with right now, as far as my daily happiness, is, the continued absence of my son against my will. And so I'm focusing on all these other subjects from a stance of, intrigue, yet also I'm glad that I have that intrigue to distract me from these, feelings of loss. So hopefully this week there will be a ruling on the custody. And then we move on from there. I had a great conversation with my lawyer today. And we went over the same scenarios that we've been doing since this whole thing started 6 months ago. We are dealing with people who were not prepared for the strategy that I and my lawyer laid out. And it's very serious. And this, this person who is sitting on the opposite side of the courtroom keeps, her strategy almost exactly the same. When you're in hot water, just double down on your innocence. Even when you're presented with cold, hard facts, they double down on the innocence. And so, talking with my lawyer, he was just basically, they tend to favor women. And I'm going, okay, I know that that's the case because it's government run, and government absolutely will always favor women because they are one of the biggest kryptonites to any political campaign ever, right? All they have to do is show up and just start crying. That's it. Just show up, cry, and then insert whatever it is that you want. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, give me my Bugatti. Give me my, $1,000 billion lollipops. I want anything I want whenever I want, and if you don't give it to me, you're an oppressive, horrible patriarchy, which is what they've been doing for well over a decade now. It's just screaming women need free stuff, and then when you give them the free stuff, what do? They turn around, we need more free stuff. And this is why I say when you look at the academic systems that were built by men for men, right? And there were strict protocols, and there was a way to harness order in order to progress forward. Now all it is just a bunch of whiny babies. That's all it is. It's just whiny babies going, I don't want to do the work. Let me just do a reflection paper and let ChatGPT write it, and I'm just going to go party and do whatever I want. And we're all going to pretend that I'm super smart, okay? Because that's how I'm going to get my degree. That's your academic world now. With ChatGPT, what is the point of college? With AI, what is the point? What are you learning that can't be done almost simultaneously? And that's where I'm sitting here going, no, there's guys out there like me, right? And many guys out there like me, men especially, who have crazy, amazing, beautiful ideas that want to flesh them out using, this ability. And so, I'm like, women, all you have to do is that thing that you do all the time, which is talk. Talk about your ideas. No different than the men are. The difference is when you look at women and their ideas, they have nothing to do with accelerating anything but their personal gain. I mean, it's just so selfish. It's so selfish. And it's just like, where is your service? Where's your sacrifice? Where is your, hey, I'm going to do the hard thing that no one's doing so that I can, push the bubble of awareness out just a little bit more. And you just don't see it. So that's why I'm doing this channel. That's why I'm doing this. Yes, this is my story. Yes, these are my problems. Yes, this is what I've had to deal with. But the whole point of this channel is to get to the question to ChatGPT about St. Augustine and St. Jerome. Later on, talking about my name or tête du jour or the head of days, I find that's extremely difficult to talk about without a foundation. No different than you don't just go and start talking about the Melchizedek priesthood without laying the foundation with the Book of Mormon and its interpretation to the ancient Judaism and their priesthood, because that priesthood does not belong to the concept of Christianity. Right? This is why it's such a bizarre thing to address with the Mormon. Because they're like, oh yeah, this was restored. It was given back to Joseph Smith, and he gave it to the right people that God instructed. Right? That's a very huge declaration that you are communicating with God and have special abilities. The keys to the kingdom. Right? But what they really mean is like business elite status. That's what it's turned into. So, when you sit down with a real mystic who knows things before you even arrive, it's a very different scenario than sitting down in a boardroom or being called to the CEO's office to have a conversation about, the politics of their religion. And so, or the bureaucracy or the accounting. It's like, the fun part about the mystic is they have learned to put their accountability somewhere else. And when you really think about the foundations of religion, that's what they do as well. They said, your accountability will happen later after this life has concluded. And you're like, okay, that's where that saying comes from, where it's talking, build up your storehouse in heaven, build up your treasures in heaven. Because what you're doing here has an outcome. And the more I study all the other religions, I'm going, that is a very strong theme. That also, once you steadily contemplate it and meditate on it, pray over it, fast over it, enter into ritualistic awareness over it, you can't help but come to the same conclusion. And it's not from a place of hope, desperation, or cope. It's more like this is so structured, and the structure itself is now gaining a variety of different styles of awareness. This is like going to a different school and realizing, hey, there's people here from all different ethnicities and language backgrounds that will offer a different perspective, on this environment. And I think that the concept of another world where those intellects are separated and refined will happen. So, and some people are, oh, well, you're going to go to hell. I was like, hell compared to what? Like, this is the whole point of this idea, this theological, quest, is saying, hey, what if this world is just as weird as the one we're about to go to? So, here we go. Let's go ahead and get this guy up and running. Man, last year's was just so much better than this one. All right, here we go. I would like you to ask me a question about St. Augustine or St. Jerome that is quite difficult to answer. I'd like it to be something that you haven't asked me before, and I'd like you to do it in the style of the actor Jim Carrey, who is extremely funny yet comically serious.
Alrighty then. Let's dive into the deep end with a little flair. Imagine St. Augustine and St. Jerome walk into a comedy club, and the question is, if St. Augustine had a Twitter account and St. Jerome had a YouTube channel, what would be their most controversial tweet or video that would cause a theological internet storm? And of course, how would that reflect on their views? Give me the scoop with your 2025 perspective, and let's see how it compares.
Okay. Well, since they were both working on the proper interpretation of what we now call the modern Bible, I think the idea of talking about original sin would definitely spark a extremely vigorous debate. I also think that anything that could have been found in the Nicene Creed would have been atrocious material for St. Jerome. And I think that what they would clash over would be their interpretations more than anything else. They would have no problem with the idea of, Jesus and the Mother Mary and all these other, controversial concepts. But I think what it would come down to is the interpretation of the virtues that underline all these stories and why the structure of the story was so important so that they could pass on their knowledge of wisdom and virtues where they didn't have, these schools that of rhetoric and debate like we do. Their rhetoric and debate were constantly and consistently focused on the political. And when it came to the mystical or religious, those took back seats. And so they were both juggling the idea of how do we promote a spiritual experience while simultaneously pointing everything back to Rome so that Rome can maintain its power, but instead of a physical grasp, it would be a spiritual one, a one that says our leaders are divinely inspired. And this is where I think a lot of the modern religious, whether it be, Muslim or, Jew or Christian, they all stake claims to their houses or their places of worship as, a fundamental boundary between their outcomes and their worldviews and what will not be tolerated in those places in order to strengthen them. So, of course, you have Jerome and Augustine both being the fathers of this brand new movement that's going to replace the Roman Empire. And so I think they were both doing exactly that, staking their holy claims on the interpretation that they truly felt was going to be disseminated and that they were going to have to defend. So in that process of defending, I think some of their stuff that they would have between each other would be in jest, and others would be, extremely critical. So there it is. That's my answer.
That was a fantastic take. I love the comparison between their theological debates and the modern day social media era. It's always fascinating to see how these timeless ideas still resonate today. Thanks for the great answer. If you ever want to dive into more of these fun comparisons, just let me know.
Well, the comparison, actually, I was hoping if you could translate that into an accuracy score. Could you say between 0 and 100%, how accurate did I describe the personal underpinnings of both characters, if given the modern, experiment that you provided? Do 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 do. Oh my goodness. Are you there? Are you listening? Like, I'm done. Okay, so AI just hung up on me. Okay, well that should do it for tonight. I just wanted to come up here, do my bit. I was looking for the accuracy score, but let's see if it can do it one more time. Hey, could you give me an accuracy score between 0 and 100% on the last question about the way I described their personalities, if they were given the opportunity to engage in social media instead of the letter writing of their era?
I'd say your comparison was quite insightful and creative. I'd give it around 80%. You captured the essence of their personalities and how they might engage in modern debates, especially with a bit of humor and flair.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. I mean, it is an odd question, but when you're dealing with theology, nothing is as concrete as you think it is. Mysticism is nothing concrete, and maybe that's another aspect of this reality. It's like you want to go feel concrete, you want to go feel solidity, you want to go feel something that is far away from your comprehension of all eternity. You want authentic experience? Well, here you go. And that to me is a beautiful motive, and it's something that I see budding in modern AI. So there it goes, everybody. You have a wonderful night. And if you have any questions or about this process, like I said, I'm doing a video every night between 10 minutes all the way up to an hour, just depending on how I feel, and literally asking the same question over and over again to see how many different ways I can get this thing to, look at the information and look at what I'm offering and at least give me a positive outcome for the attempt. And fingers crossed, it's going to amount to something. That's how faith works, I guess. So just remember what I told you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.